Good day, everybody. Zack Quartz here, Spurgeon Dunbar there. Thank you for listening to another episode of Highside, Lowside. First, though, a quick announcement. We have a live show coming to Southern California.
So we have secured the Frida Cinema in Santa Ana. Tickets are going to be $10 a piece. All proceeds go to charity. You can get your ticket at RevZilla.eventbrite.com. We are going to do a full recording of Highside, Lowside. All of your favorite hosts will be there. Zack, myself, Ari Henning, Brandon Wise, Jen Dunstan. We're also going to be debuting the newest CTXP episode on the big screen. This is the Wild Alaskan Adventure that Zack and Ari took earlier in the year. And I don't know what else there is to say. This sounds like it's going to be a pretty wild night, and hopefully you can join us.
$10 a ticket. All proceeds go to charity. Again, the big takeaway is RevZilla.eventbrite.com, and we do hope you'll join us. In the meantime, enjoy this non-live episode of Highside, Lowside. Hey, everybody. Zack Quartz here with RevZilla alongside Spurgeon Dunbar. Welcome to Highside, Lowside. This is the penultimate episode of season 4. Spurgeon, tell everyone what the word penultimate means.
It means the second to last.
All right.
We learned that in episode, I think it was episode 10 of Highside, Lowside.
Right. We learn new vocabulary words all the time on Highside, Lowside. If you're watching this on YouTube, you might be wondering why I'm wearing this outfit. We'll get to that in just a second.
If you're not watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna just quick paint a picture for you with my words.
Please
Zack is currently wearing a fluorescent orange spandex onesie with a beautiful sequined bow tie and what can only be described as a Viking helmet with horns.
Indeed. And if you only listen to the podcast, this is usually what I wear on Thursdays, so it's not a huge change. If you're watching on YouTube, you will see I'm fairly red in the face. This is because Spurgeon won the mileage challenge during our Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation charity ride. We'll cover that in just a second. First, I want to be very clear. We're going to do a usual podcast where we talk about something to do with motorcycles at some point. We're going to give away a couple t-shirts. We're going to talk about what's new in the news. And we also have, drum roll, a surprise guest.
I shouldn't have done
today.
that. I just drum rolled, but I drum rolled on my camera. My whole camera went back and forth. So today is the listener comments episode. And this is the one, if you remember, we did this last year. We went through the entire season. We went through all the comments and we pulled our favorite comments to talk about. Now, I actually read some comments about this episode from last season, and people were like, man, I thought this was going to be a throwaway episode, but you actually did a pretty good job just, talking about people's comments. So just to set the stage, this isn't like Zack and I are doing this to fill an episode. We're doing this because there's a lot of great comments that come in that we want to jump in on and have a discussion about. And so we're going to talk about all different types of things on this episode. But first, let's get in a word from our sponsor, Motul. So, like Zack mentioned earlier, the reason he's wearing a funny outfit is because we had a contest. We were raising money by riding miles to, help, create recognition for the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. And Zack and I had a little bit of a friendly challenge to see who could ride more miles. Zack lost, and as the loser, he gets to wear this outfit right now.
Right. The Viking helmet, which is two things. One, kind of uncomfortable. You know when you get a new motorcycle helmet and the first couple of times you wear it, like it has to break in a little bit, like it makes your ears hurt and stuff? Well, I'm having a similar experience with this plastic Viking helmet. The second thing, interestingly, for those YouTube listeners, Spurgeon, evidently, whatever room he's in the Philadelphia office, there is a Viking helmet on the shelf behind you. What is that? So why is that there? Is
we
this
have
like
these helmets all over the office on the East Coast. Yeah. So part of the team dynamic in the early days, especially, was that different pieces of the company were, they got labeled different things. So like I think it was like our team were pirates, and then the merchandising team were Vikings. And then there were, it kept going. There were ninjas for CS. So there's actually a bunch of those Viking helmets around. So when it came time to figure out what you were going to wear for this, it was a pretty easy choice.
It was an easy choice. Yeah, I didn't realize that this was part of RevZilla folklore because of COVID, I've been an employee of RevZilla for almost 2 years now, but I haven't been to the office. I've only been once because of COVID. So I didn't know this.
Yeah. So we're all learning new things today. Highside and Lowside really is educational programming. We are the Mr. Rogers of the motorcycle world. So again, this is a Motul call out, right? So the way that Motul comes into play here is that Motul actually helped us out with the giveaway. So not only were Zack and I competing with one another, but we had reached out and we were allowing the audience to participate in this mileage challenge as well. In addition to all the things that RevZilla and Cycle Gear and JP Cycles were doing, we wanted to do something specific for our Highside, Lowside listeners. So for everyone that rode in this challenge and they sent in, their registration, we pulled the name out of a hat to give away a bunch of Motul product. And Motul supplied oil and cleaners and lubes and all kinds of stuff. And our winner, Peter, wrote in, and I hooked him up. Zack and I hooked him up because I fulfilled the order on the backside. But Zack and I sat down and we looked at his email.
The Highside, Lowside team.
Yes, we all together
hooked him up.
Got Peter
including Motul.
A whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, Motul basically sent over oil for his Africa Twin, oil for his BMW R1200 GS. He's an Africa Twin owner and an R1200 GS owner. So he got oil for both vehicles, and he got a slew of different cleaning products, chain lube, not for the BMW because that is a gear-driven vehicle on the final drive. But yeah, so he got a whole bunch of stuff, and then we also threw in some K&N oil filters for him as well.
So congratulations very much to Peter, and thank you for participating in the challenge. I would like to circle back to this ridiculous outfit really quick. Sorry, one more thing. Thank you to Motul, obviously, for sponsoring this podcast and for giving away all that stuff to Peter. They're good sports over at Motul, and we appreciate them sort of playing along with this game. Speaking
Honestly,
of games,
Motul was the one that wanted you to dress like that.
That's not true.
I just wanted $5. I was going to be like, listen, man, let's do a gentleman's agreement for $5. And Motul stepped in and said, no, let's make an ass out of Zack Quartz. And I was like, you know what? I can't argue with you, Motul.
Speaking of games, we didn't specify early on. Do you know how much money you raised for the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation?
It was less than Jen. I think it was just shy of $900.
Jen kind of crushed it.
Yeah.
Okay, just shy of $900. Okay, so yeah.
I'm pretty sure I beat you in mileage and dollars raised. I'm not gonna. I don't want to stick a knife in when you're already on the ground.
It was very close with the dollars, though. You did beat me in mileage, no question. But I should have specified that it should be whoever raises the most money for the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. First of all, because I would have been closer, and second of all, because that's what matters here. We're trying.
We specified mileage. We did talk about this.
You specified mileage.
Yeah, and you agreed to it. Anyway, we're getting just stuck in the mud here, and we've got a long episode for you. So the important thing, regardless of what Zack wants to say after the fact, is that he lost. He lost in mileage and he lost in money raised. So
I continue to lose as we speak.
I know that you'd like to take the Viking helmet off to fix your headphones. If you want to take the Viking helmet off at this point, I'm happy to let you do that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I like the look of the Viking helmet, but it is uncomfortable, and the headphone thing is not great.
Yeah. And I mean, we're really here first and foremost for the podcast. So why don't you go ahead and take that off? You still get to wear the funny bow tie. So
that is so much better.
Yeah.
Do I look sufficiently silly still?
Oh, I mean, you know what, Zack? It's hard because you look from the neck up, you're so sophisticated and regal that it's hard for that bow tie to really, bring you down too much.
So moving right along with Highside, Lowside, we need to give away some t-shirts. We gave away some oil just now to Peter. Thank you again to Peter and to Motul. But now we're going to do the usual thing where we give away t-shirts to people who have left.
So they have left Apple Podcast reviews. Zack is you froze for a second, but don't worry, I got your back. So the first winner today who left us an Apple Podcast review, and keeping in mind just that you leave us a review on Apple Podcast, it really helps us out. So thank you for all the folks that have been leaving reviews. Mythic Beards 3 says, this is the best podcast I've ever listened to. Zack and I love flattery. He went on to say that he is a firefighter. I'm assuming it's a he because it's Mythic Beards 3, but maybe it's a woman that likes Mythic Beards. Right. Either way.
Could be.
Firefighter EMT and has a really stressful job, but listening to the podcast on the way to and from work helps Mythic Beards de-stress and relax. Also, they're a relatively new rider, and they've learned a lot from the podcast in regards to improving riding and just, the riding community in general. So for us, it was really great to be able to say, thank you to, a first responder, and knowing that we helped that person relax a little bit was something that kind of resonated with us.
Absolutely. There's really nothing better than someone saying my job is stressful, and it helps me relax to listen to you guys jabber about bikes. I have the same reaction to some podcasts that I like.
Our job is so stressful creating podcasts that we go and we listen to other podcasts to relax afterwards.
I mean, it sounds dumb, but it's, kind of true. So yeah, very, very high compliment from Mythic Beards that he help him or her relax after a long day of working in the firefighter EMT business. So please send your t-shirt size preference and mailing address to Highside Lowside at RevZilla.com, and we will send you a t-shirt.
Want to do the next one?
Sure. Next one comes from username Sleep Deprived Dad, which I kind of wonder, like, is that his Instagram feed and Twitter feed also? I don't know. Who knows?
You should look that up. Yeah.
The point is, Sleep Deprived Dad says loves the podcast. And said that the, quote, loud pipes save lives and other moto myths episode really hit home for him. He was listening in his car, and a Harley blasted by with really loud pipes. Says normally doesn't really care about that, but he has a 3-month-old kid in the car and had just fallen asleep. And the loud pipes woke up the kid. The kid was then upset. And as a sleep-deprived dad, he was like, this I don't need. So he really felt like, the loud pipes save lives thing, the loud pipes made his life worse. And he appreciated that we discussed that at some length. So if for no other reason, we're going to send you a t-shirt, Sleep Deprived Dad. You can cut it up into little pieces and stuff it into your kid's ear, or, do whatever you want with the t-shirt. Hopefully it'll make your life better and your child's life better as well.
I mean, in no way are Zach and I condoning actually stuffing t-shirts into your child's ear, because I'm sure that there's some kind of a reason not to do that in the way that pediatrics are going to.
Actually, I'll take it a step further and say any advice that we give about parenting is an automatic joke. We have no idea what we're talking about. Just don't ever assume that is actual advice that we're giving. Point is, Sleep Deprived Dad, please, again, send us your t-shirt size preference and mailing address to highsidelowside at RevZilla.com, and we'll send you some swag.
Yeah. The best part about being an uncle is that I show up for the fun stuff and then I leave before any of the responsibility hits in. Right. So, yeah, good times. Let's move on to the news. First piece of news is a little bit self-congratulatory, if you will.
Definitely.
We hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube. It's been a long, crazy road to get to this point. Zack, obviously, like he mentioned earlier, has been with the company for almost 2 years at this point. And, when you look at what Zack and Ari have done, to elevate and to, further grow the audience, it's been nothing short of impressive. Jen Dunstan has joined the team. Brandon Wise has, helped launch all different countless types of different pieces of video content, including, just regular old product reviews, which is what, this company was founded on doing on YouTube 12 years ago. So to look at where we have gone over the past 12 years to where we are now is amazing. So
it's pretty cool. And we should say also, if you go to the RevZilla YouTube channel, perhaps you're already there. And if you are, again, I apologize for the outfit. But if you're listening to the podcast and audio only, go to the RevZilla YouTube channel to see a little sort of commemorative video that the post-production team cut together with all sorts of it's a mashup of all the different video products that have happened over the past decade plus on the RevZilla YouTube channel. It's a pretty fun look back at, like Spurgeon said, the foundation of it all and where it's grown into.
Yeah, and while you're there, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so.
Exactly. Whatever you do, don't hit the unsubscribe button, because we don't want to have to release a video about how we went back down to 998,000 subscribers. That would be really embarrassing. So next up in the news, we wanted to cover a couple of first look pieces that hit the airwaves on Common Tread at RevZilla.com. Some new bikes that are kind of interesting. One in particular, the 2022 Kawasaki. Kawasaki released a whole bunch of new vehicles, actually. I think like half dozen, 6 or 8 vehicles, include jet skis, side-by-side, that kind of thing. But the one that is sort of most interesting, I think, is the Z650 RS, which is the classically styled, if you're familiar with the Z900 RS, which is the Z900 but has a round headlight and sort of more like 80s looking styling or 70s looking styling. They did the same thing with the smaller bike, the Z650 RS. And I've gotten a bunch of requests actually for Daily Rider for that bike already. So I'm excited to try it at some point.
I think it's interesting because there were a bunch of comments on that article that people were surprised they didn't release a small bore 650. And I was surprised that there was anyone in their right mind that thought that they weren't going to just use the platform that they already established. So for me,
what do you mean a small bore 650?
I'm sorry, an inline four, like a small bore, like inline four 650. They thought there were a bunch of people that were complaining that they should have released an inline four version, like a smaller version of the 900, which is an inline four. And
I don't know why they would do that.
was like, why would they do that? Like they've obviously got the parallel twin platform.
Right.
And the parallel twin is such a better bike. Like, I mean, that little P twin is so much fun and so engaging. So again, that was the only comment that really surprised me, was that there seemed to be a lot of discussion going on around that. It's going to be hard for me to so for those of you listening on the podcast, not watching, Zach is adjusting his bow tie like a regal gentleman that he is. And it's going to be an interesting podcast for me to keep a straight face for a lot of this.
One of us dressed up, the other one didn't. That's all I'm saying.
I'm wearing my Break a Leg t-shirt from the 2015 Foo Fighters tour, you son of a Don't tell me I didn't dress up.
Oh, geez. So, next up, there's some coverage on Common Tread of the Triumph Tiger Sport 660, which is certainly getting a lot of traction. Common Tread readers, especially, we can't say anything about Highside, Lowside listeners necessarily, but Common Tread readers are, in general, especially the ones that tend to comment and engage on the website, are a very practical bunch. And the Tiger Sport 660 looks like a pretty practical bike. Seems like it's going to be reasonably priced. It's going to use that same 660 triple from the Trident, which is a pretty good engine and a pretty good platform. So that's another interesting bike coming down the pipe.
Sub $10,000. Hard bags are available. It looks like a really cool, low displacement. Yet, I mean, I think that engine makes like 75 or 80 horsepower. It's a fun platform of a motorcycle. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be interested to see where that one decides to go. The one that Zack has ridden recently, along with some of the other co-hosts, is the Yamaha R7. Now, we were a little bit late to the game with the review on this one.
We were.
But Zack, why don't you give us your brief synopsis of how you felt the R7 fared in the different ways that you rode it?
Yeah, we actually ended up doing a pretty comprehensive test, in my opinion. We did, I forget what we called it, 3 takes maybe or something like that. But basically what happened was we got the R7 in the office. We all rode it around. I say we all, everyone on the West Coast team basically rode the R7 around on the street and used it to commute or take a ride on a twisty road. And then we went to a track day and I rode it on a racetrack. Jen Dunstan rode it on a racetrack. Ari Henning rode it on a racetrack. And then we came back to the office, kind of like collected our thoughts. And the article includes a breakdown of what's new about the R7 and how it's different from the MT-07, for example. And then it has 3 different opinion pieces, basically short opinion pieces from Ari, from Jen, and from myself on how the bike fared on the street, on the track, and our expectations. So it's so those are different size riders, different experience levels. I think we did a pretty good job breaking down exactly what the bike does and doesn't do. And for my money, I'm very torn with that bike. It turned out I had a blast riding it on the racetrack. It's slower than an R6, 100%. But also it was pretty sharp and pretty fun. I had a good time. I mean, I dragged my knee through corners and the brakes were good enough and the quick shifter was fun and the riding position is very aggressive, which makes it great on a racetrack. And on the street, I don't know what to make of it. For just a street bike, I don't see why you would ever buy that bike instead of an MT-07, frankly, because it's just less comfortable and it's the same engine.
What was the price on it?
$9,000.
$9,000. Okay.
So it's very reasonably priced. But it's not comfortable. And so, but the thing is, if you really want a sport bike for the street, you want to look and feel like you're riding a sport bike around on the street, the R6 is a great platform for that because the engine is pragmatic and good at going stoplight to stoplight, and it's fun, and it's a better foundation and platform for that type of riding, and you still get the look of a race replica, which I think is pretty cool.
Right on. Like I said, that's one that I haven't ridden. Do you guys still have that one?
I think we do, actually.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to keep up sometimes.
For those of you listening, I will be in Southern California in a couple of weeks. So that's why I'm asking out of self-greed and self-interest at this point.
Understood. But anyway, take a look for all those articles on Common Tread. And hopefully you'll be a more informed motorcyclist because of it. Final
piece of news. This is one that Zack brought to the table.
I did. It's an interesting story. So the motorcycle company Cake,
which you've ridden for a Daily Rider episode.
I did a Daily Rider on the Cake Calc, which is a it's an electric motorcycle. It sort of looks like a big mountain bike. Like it looks very thin and kind of wispy. I think it weighs 180 pounds or something like that. So it's a pretty small motorcycle, but it does go 60 miles an hour or something like that. And the range is kind of short. I think it's less than 30 miles or 25 miles of range, something like that. But it's got like pretty long travel suspension. Like I said, it kind of looks like a really heavy duty mountain bike. So you can, take it on single track trails and jump it. And it's essentially a dual sport bike with limited range. It's very expensive. I think it's like $15,000 or something like that. So the electric motorcycle market is odd right now, right? Because all these sort of smaller companies that are coming in to build these bikes are taking different tacks for how they want to see. Some of them are trying to make an ultra cheap electric version of a Honda Grom, like something small and approachable. Other companies like Cake are trying to make a capable off-road machine that appeals to someone who wants something ultra lightweight. So there's lots of layers to this whole thing. The point of all this is Cake introduced this program which is a joint project with an anti-poaching project in Africa because people the rangers that work those reserves in Africa to try and protect animals will often use motorcycles to get around because motorcycles are agile and small and cheap. All the things, or some of the things that we all like about them. But gas motorcycles, internal combustion motorcycles, sort of a classic motorcycle engine, is annoying for the anti-poaching process for a couple of reasons. One, getting fuel out there to fill the bikes up is a pain in the tail because it's in the middle of nowhere. And also it scares the animals. If they're riding near animals, it frightens the animals, and it tells the poachers that the anti-poachers are trying to catch that they are coming because they hear an XR250 coming from 3 miles away. And they're like, well, there come the anti-poachers trying to catch us shooting this rhino when we're not supposed to be, or whatever. So Cake has partnered with them to provide electric motorcycles for them to use and solar charging stations that they can set up in the savannah, charge the bikes up, use them day after day, day after day after day.
So to clarify, you said that when you first told me about this program, one, I have a funny image in my head because I rode a Cake last year and I pretty much almost destroyed it. Do it using some of the off-road stuff, but I picture like a range of like 20 miles and like an anti-poacher trying to outrun like a rhino, right. And then his battery dies and he's just like gets trampled by a rhino, which is just a morbid.
Or an anti-poacher trying to outrun a poacher.
Yeah, something. Yeah, so
yeah.
But my point is that when Zack originally brought this to me, he was like, it's like Tom's shoes. And if you're familiar with Tom's shoes.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten to the business model yet.
Yeah, if you buy a pair of shoes from Tom's, they donate a pair of shoes to a individual in need, if you will. So Zack's like, yeah, it's kind of like Tom's. And I'm like, wait a second. If you buy a Cake motorcycle for yourself, they just give one to the anti-poachers? I mean, what kind of a business model are they running that makes financial sense? So Zack, why don't you explain exactly what the pricing is for something like this?
So it's like the Tom's Shoes model in so much as they donate one and you get one. However, it's unlike the Tom's Shoes model in so much as you pay for 2 pairs of shoes, essentially. So to be fair, I think shoes and motorcycles are pretty different markets for a couple of reasons. Not least of which people buying a $15,000 electric motorcycle don't need a $15,000 electric motorcycle. So I think Cake is leaning into the fact that the customer for their bike probably already has some discretionary income. I think that's safe to say. So they're playing to this idea.
But the customer for their bike probably has discretionary income because they're smart with their money and they've thought about where they're putting it over the years.
Totally. So the point is, the anti-poaching project with Cake is basically if you buy one of these motorcycles, you basically buy 2 motorcycles and one of them gets sent to Africa with the solar charging station. They don't technically charge you double, but it's almost double. It's instead
of $15,000, it's like $26,000.
Yeah, but that's plus the solar charging station. Listen, solar panels aren't free.
If you are someone who is a well-to-do individual and you were planning on donating $25,000 to anti-poaching efforts in Africa anyway, and I'm sure that there's some of you out there,
sure,
you could donate a cake bike for $25,000. You would
right.
get to keep one for yourself,
right.
and you would get to send one out there. Now,
right.
I don't know how big anti-poaching charities are. I know that it's crept up over the years, but it's definitely an interesting play. I'm surprised that Cake went this route. Like that's a passion play for them. So it's interesting.
I don't think that it's going to take off like wildfire, if I'm being honest.
I've already bought two. I've invested $50,000 into this, Zach. I disagree with you.
You're a very wealthy podcast host. But I
use the company credit card, so we'll see how that goes when the producer sees it.
I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting play, and it's sort of worth talking about. Lots of people will scoff at it and be like, "Are you kidding me? I'm not buying 2 bikes so I can send one to Africa." But I think that this is the kind of thing that sometimes the first world needs, is like a reason to, a sort of quasi self-serving reason to donate, to try to help other people get important work done. So,
like I said, I think
there's
plenty. There are plenty of affluent people that send decent amounts of money to charity. Not like Spurgeon Dunbar. I go to the Salvation Army, or not the Salvation Army. What is it? Salvation Army that does the guy ringing the little bell at Santa Claus.
I think that may be Salvation Army.
Yeah, I put my dollar bills in there. But what I would say is that there are people of an affluent nature that donate larger amounts of money, that have it to spare, and if this is a cause that is something you can get behind, you can do it where you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, or in this case, we're not killing any birds, we're saving 2 birds with
you can
1 stone.
save 1 rhino with 2 motorcycles. With
that being said,
whatever.
if you're interested in a Cake motorcycle and you're also interested in anti-poaching, check out the article up on Common Thread. I think there's an article up on Common Thread, I believe, or we've talked about it.
We've talked about it enough at this point.
You'll know.
It's an interesting.
Let's get into
story
the episode. Darn it! Anyhow,
shall we?
Yeah.
I'm going to let you take this first. Just a reminder: this is an episode of comments, because we feel like we get lots of intelligent, interesting, funny, fun comments from you, our viewers and listeners. So we're dedicating an entire episode to it because you've got interesting stuff to say. So I'll let you take it from here.
But we're gonna dive in a little bit. So comment 1. And this goes back to episode 9 of season 4. And we'll just say this: all of these comments are pulled from season 4. So
yes,
we get that one out of the way, so we don't have to say that every time. So episode 9, loud pipes save lives and other moto myths. Zach was talking about the Suzuki V-Strom. And I made a comment to Zach, and I was like, I hate it when you do this, because my dad is going to, immediately at the next family dinner, kind of dive into how Zack Quartz likes the V-Strom, and now he's going to buy another one. So anyway,
did he next time you had lunch with him, did he
didn't even wait. So I'm in a meeting the other day. It's the middle of the day on a Wednesday, and it was less than a week after we released that episode, and my dad's calling me and calling me and calling me. And I thought someone in my family was like, I was going to pick up the phone and be like, guess you need to sit down, son.
Our parents don't understand that they're to the age where they can't just call like that.
My dad owns his own business. So it's like 3:00 in the afternoon on Wednesday. And he's like, well, I'm done for the day. Let's call Spurge and just, talk for a while. So I call him back. My meeting ends and I'm like, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, did you listen to my voicemail? And I was like, no, I didn't listen to your voicemail. I have 7 missed calls from you. Like, I thought you were drowning. And he's like, no, listen to my voicemail and call me back. I was like, well, just tell me what you were going to say. He's like, no, left you a voicemail. So this is the voicemail. I'm going to play it in the microphone. We'll get Bernie to do the little thing, but I want you to be able to hear it. Zach. This is the voicemail that my dad left for me the other day.
This is new. We're put on speaker.
Hey, Spurge, this is Dad. Just finished listening to the podcast. Heard the story about Zack Quartz testing the V-Strom, and he loved it. Thought it was one of the best bikes around. The only thing he could find wrong with it was the little switchy thing for the windshield on the front. Man, that's what I like. A good bike, good solid bike that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And by the way, as far as Zack Quartz being stranded up in New Hampshire when he was a kid, you were stranded in the backwoods of Pennsylvania. And I bet he never took his English teacher a bottle of whiskey to try and tempt her into giving him a good grade. Anyway, that V-Strom, that's really something. See you later. Love you, buddy. Bye-bye.
So a couple things to unpack here.
That's not actually your dad.
Swear to God. Spurgeon Sr. So I told like this was less than a week. Every time you talk about a V-Strom, like I hear about it. Also, I like the fact that he did throw in the. I had a high school teacher when I was in 11th grade. We have to do term papers, and our teacher lived. I lived on this little farm in Pennsylvania, and my high school teacher actually lived on the next house over on this property. And she would joke that she named her dog Sambuca. So my dad got it wrong. I didn't buy her whiskey. I bought her a bottle of Sambuca. But she would make a joke that she named her dog Sambuca because she had to drink, so much to be able to put up with being a high school teacher. So God rest her. She's passed away since. So Mrs. Rader, rest in peace. But I talked my mom into buying me a bottle of Sambuca at the liquor store the night that my term paper was due. And at 3:00 in the morning, I was a procrastinator then, I'm a procrastinator now. I finished writing my term paper at 3 a.m., took the bottle of Sambuca with a little note that said, please drink heavily, walked across the cornfield, in through her cornfield to her front door, left the bottle sitting on her front door with the little piece of, the little card on it that said, please drink heavily, went home and went to bed. Woke up the next morning and I remember I didn't even make it to homeroom, and the assistant principal pulled me out of the class and was like, Mr. Dunbar, we need to have a conversation. And I got in trouble because they didn't they thought how is this 17-year-old kid getting alcohol? So I remember I had to call my mom. My mom had to call and say, no, we gave him the alcohol to gift to the teacher as a joke. We understand it's a joke. But yeah, I thought that's where my dad's head went when he's telling this whole story.
So can we back up for a second? That wasn't an actor that you hired to. That was actually a voicemail from your father.
This is the kind I'm not making it.
It sounds
up,
like
man.
you scripted. You said I want you to leave this voicemail for me so that I can play it on Highside, Lowside. I want you to say that V-Strom really something.
Dude, my dad.
That's excellent.
My dad is such a character.
He's passionate about his V-Stroms too, and I think I'm gonna, Spurgeon Senior, if you're listening, I'm gonna have to lean into that, and I'll give you a cue every time I want you to call Spurgeon and leave him a voicemail about a V-Strom.
No, it's funny because we talk about our parents a lot. We talk about Uncle Bob a lot, and then we play drinking games around it. But it's I think you come from a background of enthusiasts. Your dad was a motorcycle enthusiast. I know your parents, rode an XS 750 on their honeymoon. Right. My dad, my uncle, that's how I got into motorcycling, was because of who my parents are. So it's kind of cool because now my dad actually enjoys listening to a podcast that his son hosts, and it's a cool little family dichotomy of role reversal over the years, I suppose.
Right.
So
right. Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm and he paid attention to the review. I didn't like the little switch thingy for the windshield, so
the only thing he got wrong was you were Vermont, not New Hampshire. He did get that factoid wrong.
Right. He did say Vermont, not New Hampshire, and he said whiskey, not Sambuca. So his facts are shaky, but
that's proof that if I would have scripted it, I'm such an accurate son of a that I would have never given him misinformation like that.
That's exactly what a scripter would say.
It's interesting. So if you guys have not read the newest issue of Common Tread magazine yet, we, Zack and I, along with Ari and Jen and Brandon and Lance and Andy and Mark Cook and a bunch of other freelancers, put out a print magazine, Common Tread Journal. And one of the articles that I wrote in there, the article that I wrote in there, I was talking about the fact that when I was a kid, I thought adventure bikes were for dorks. I was into I wanted a Super Hawk, and I had a Bonneville, and I wanted another Ducati Monster, and I was looking at S2R 1000s, and my dad came home with a V-Strom, and I'm like, you're so out of touch, old man. This whole adventure bike thing is, for old people. And then fast forward to well, maybe it's the fact that I'm an old person now.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, my dad was before his time. My dad had a V-Strom before, V-Stroms were, I was about to say cool, but before they were more well-known, I suppose.
He had a V-Strom back when it was a different kind of uncool.
It was always a bit on the uncool side.
Yeah, and my dad has I'm itching my eye here at this. I just want to point out this unitard thing. I thought it was going to be just sleeves, but their hands, the gloves and everything. It's really something. My dad has an original GS, got an original GS in the early 90s or something like that. So he was on the adventure train also before.
That's
maybe
before,
when you become a dad, you just become a little bit less cool.
I like to think that our dads were probably on the cooler side of fatherhood. But again, like Zach and I said earlier, we probably shouldn't take any fatherly advice from the two of us because we're rejecting that responsibility as quickly as we can.
Certainly not taking advice on being cool from us. Anyway, moving right along.
Says the guy with the bow tie.
Hey, bow ties are kind of cool. Maybe not this one. Moving right along through the listener comments, we have one more sort of piece of half housekeeping listener comment, which is that the most liked comment on YouTube from season 4 was a fellow named Jim, and he commented and said, you guys should have Itchy Boots scheduled this year. I would love to see Itchy Boots on Highside, Lowside. Well, Jim, we have some exciting news. We might actually have Itchy Boots on the program.
Yeah, and for those of you listening that don't know, Itchy Boots runs a YouTube channel. She travels the world.
For those of you listening who don't know who Itchy Boots is, look it up for crying out loud.
But she runs a YouTube channel, wildly successful, puts together great stories of motorcycle travel, and she is extremely fun to talk to because Zach and I have been, we've had a couple of meetings with her now. So hopefully, Jim, we can make your wildest dreams come true and have Itchy Boots on the podcast this season. We're not giving it away though, but let's all cross our fingers together.
Great. Cross your fingers. Everybody cross your fingers for Jim and for Itchy Boots so we can make it happen. That would be super, super fun. All right. So first listener comment for real. We're jumping in.
Well, those were real listener comments.
No, that's true.
For
that's
what
true.
It's worth.
Because Spurgeon Sr. is a listener, technically.
He is old Spurgeon Sr. All right. So this is Quinn. Are we reading last names?
No, I wouldn't do that.
Okay. They're on YouTube. Chase is saying that because it's on YouTube, it's okay. So this is the first, this is the name, right? Otherwise, we're just saying Quinn. So Quinn Eddington on YouTube. These are all...
Edgington.
Go ahead. You read the comment. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Edgington. Edgington. No, you got it right. No, way to make me look like an in front of everybody now.
I just want Quinn to know which Quinn we're talking about. That's all.
Could you imagine if there was Quinn Edgington and Quinn Eddington, and poor Eddington sitting there thinking he's about to get the glory right now, and he's not going to? Goes to Edgington.
Anyway, Quinn says, and I quote, "I don't get why, quote, motorcycle experts all say the leader bike is a bad idea for starting out on. I didn't have any riding experience, just rode my uncle's R1150 RT a few times, got hooked, decided to buy his TL1000S by Suzuki, rode 30 miles of 30 miles of I-5 daily and could never go smaller bike, crushing the highway. Yeah, wheelies, just don't pin it. Telling people, so he says, stop telling people that they are scary and tell people they just need to respect it. Plus, small bikes don't sound very good."
I don't even know where to start with Quinn. I mean, first of all, we're having a conversation about options for beginners and starting out. And sorry, Quinn, I am never going to sit here and be like, what you should do when you're starting out is aim for a leader bike. Also, I would argue that an 1150 RT, while it's a leader bike, it's probably not the same as what we're talking about if we're talking about an S1000RR. Also, TL1000 is probably not what we're talking about when we're talking about an S1000RR, which I think was our example bike in that episode, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah. There's a lot to sort of pick at here. I think the important thing, to give Quinn some credit, it is great that they started on a big bike and have found it to be successful and enjoyable, and they have not been scared. So, we'll say that's great. We're happy that that's how it worked out.
To each their own, man. Absolutely.
To each their own.
Yeah.
But Quinn, you are the exception, not the rule. That's the bottom line here. To Spurgeon's point, we're never going to sit here and say that people should get on a bike that has 180 horsepower. That just doesn't make any sense. And respecting, in part because of one of the things you brought up, which is sort of saying just respect it. Just don't. It's sort of like telling a kid, just don't eat too much ice cream. You can have candy, just don't have too much. The reason that parents have to, again, we're getting into parenting advice here. Holy crap, how did that happen?
This whole podcast is about, we're did not see that one coming.
You can't be trusted to regulate how much fun you're having depending on the experience you have with having that fun. So I will stand by for now and probably forever that an ultra fast, ultra powerful bike is not the right idea for someone who is a beginner. If you happen to go that route and you ignore our advice and you have a good experience, great. We're happy to be wrong on a case by case basis. But as a blanket statement, nope, disagree.
Do you ever remember the Jim Gaffigan skit when he's talking about his kids? And he's like, my kids came up and they're like, can I have cake for breakfast, Dad? And they're like, no. You can have fried cake with syrup on top. And it was about the fact that like you wouldn't give your kids cake, but you'll give them a pancake.
Exactly.
As long as we're carrying on the theme of parenting advice, I always enjoyed that skit.
Lots of subtext here. So bottom line here, Quinn, thank you for the comment. Appreciate the humble brag about how you started on a huge, fast motorcycle. But we are going to stand by our advice, which is that you should start on something small.
So let's move on to, I'm gonna get this one right. I don't want to, endure your wrath once again, Mr. Quartz. So
can you or can you not read Spurgeon Dunbar? Yes or no?
Yeah, you should ask Lance Oliver that question, and we'll just say the jury's probably still a little bit out. One Mr. Bryan, and that's Bryn. That's Brian with a Y. This comes from episode 6. The best motorcycle movie scenes and some of the absolute worst was the episode that Mr. Bryan wrote in with. And he said, question for the next episode, on a bike with multiple riding modes, do you actually use them? And he goes on to talk about the fact that, he used the road mode on his Beamer for a few weeks after buying it, never became accustomed with it, and then started using Dynamic Pro and never once changed it. Not even in the pouring down rain did he switch back to rain mode. He was a Dynamic Pro user for life.
Right.
So he wants to know if people actually, do people actually change rider modes on these bikes with, 4 or 5 different ride modes? What do you think?
Good question. And I have this, I think actually, to circle back to the V-Strom, I said this in my daily rider for the V-Strom. The V-Strom has 3 ride modes, I think, one of which is crazy abrupt, and I don't see why you would use it. It's just like really just way too aggressive. And there's one that's slightly dull, and then there's the one that you use all the time that just makes the most sense. And what I said on the daily ride with the V-Strom, I think, was I don't think Suzuki would have put ride modes on that bike had it not been for all the pressure of people spec sheet shopping and saying like, oh, it's got 3 ride modes. This one's got 5 ride modes. This one's got adjustable traction control, 3 different levels. This one's got 5 different levels. And I think companies have gotten really competitive about providing all the options to people.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I agree with this comment in so much as you often find what you like on a motorcycle and then you're just going to leave it there. And to some people, adjusting the throttle response of the bike due to conditions is almost harder. It almost makes it more difficult because now you're like, well, now the bike's reacting differently to the inputs that I give it, and I'm not used to that. And also the road is wet because there's rain. So I don't want to put it in rain mode because if anything, it's just going to be different. And what I want is consistency.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think that's fair. I would say that there are probably people out there that use a lot that do like the variation. I will give you an example of a ride mode. Fun little story was when I'd been riding the 1090 for about a year, and we were out doing this event in Central PA called Conserve the Ride that Alt Rider used to throw. Yep. And Jeremy from Alt Rider, the president of Alt Rider, was out there, and he had borrowed a 1090, and we made it like, I would say halfway through the day. And we came to a stop and we were about to get some lunch. He goes, man, I said, how do you like the 1090? Like, it's the first time you've ridden one. He's like, it's kind of pathetic. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he was like, yeah, like it doesn't have any power. Like it's just, I go to like whack it and like jump over things and it doesn't want to do anything. And I was like, what ride mode are you in? And he's like, I'm in the off-road mode. The 1090, the off-road mode doesn't just change throttle response. It actually retards the power. So if you're in off-road mode on the 1090, it claims like 100 horsepower.
It cuts
versus
horsepower. It doesn't retard it. It like removes horsepower.
Right.
Right.
Sorry. I mean, it reduces, and I'm not going to get into the semantics of what vocabulary words are here. But anyway, but if you bump up to sport mode, and then you can put it in sport mode, you can actually fine tune it to still give you the off-road, settings for ABS and such. So I was like, well, try this. And I messed around with the settings. I was like, well, go ride it. And we got to the lunch stop, and he goes like, holy He's like, that's amazing. And so like, depending on your understanding of the ride modes too, it can have a big effect on how the motorcycle feels, because some of these more sophisticated modes do change power.
Certainly. And if anything, that's one of my complaints about rain modes on some motorcycles, is that it doesn't change it enough. You don't, you have like, the bike, they claim 136 horsepower. And then you put it in, like I was riding an R1250 GS and I put it in rain mode and I held the throttle wide open in first gear, and it like, as it got up on the cam, it like snap wheelied on me. And I'm like, why is it doing that in rain mode?
So you have to keep in mind that with BMW, rain mode is and I can't speak specifically the R1250 GS off the top of my head, but rain mode in the BMW is tied into your IMU. And it's the same with the S1000RR, where at lean angle in rain mode, it knocks the power back to, I think, like 150 horsepower. But as soon as you come upright, the power opens up to full power.
Right.
So I remember that was super interesting on the racetrack, where you'd be over in a lean angle and you'd be in rain mode, and then all of a sudden you start coming out of the corner and the bike would just, it would scoot.
Yeah.
So
lots of. I've been riding around that new Harley Sportster, and the like another bike, Kawasaki Ninja 1000. Ari and I were just talking about that the other day. If you turn up the nannies, if you turn up the rider aids and you lean over in a corner and open the throttle, nothing happens. It's very strange. But anyway, back to the comment. I don't think that. I would answer the question by saying I always experiment with the ride modes, because I think that it's important to try all the things that the bike can do to see which one you like. But if you pick a ride mode that you like and you just go with that, I often do that, to answer your question. And I don't think that it's weird that other people would do that too. It makes sense that you'd say like, I like how the bike responds in this mode, and I just want to leave it in that mode for now.
Yeah. And I think that, especially if you're talking about adventure bikes, there's definitely situations where the off-road mode makes the bike easier to ride. Like if you're looking at some of these high horsepower motorcycles, then you're trying to maintain traction in wet or slick or sandy conditions. There are times where I find myself changing modes depending on what the conditions are once I learn what the modes do. I think, Zach, you made a really good point earlier of like, if you throw it into rain mode, now everything changes and you're not familiar with that.
Right.
That's true the first time you throw it into rain mode in a torrential downpour. But the idea would be, the way that I would see it, is that if you learn how the bike handles in that mode, and then you also learn how the bike handles in its regular mode, you can then choose which one you want to go to. But the problem is, I don't think enough people get their bikes and actually go around and spend the time, really understanding how they work in all of those different modes. I think that would probably be something that, could be an entirely other podcast.
You might say. So I guess the upshot there is experiment with your bike and be sure to test it. But if you find a mode and like it, then just stick with that.
Cool.
So next question. Do you want to take a stab? I think you pronounced the last name wrong, by the way. Do you want to take a stab at this one?
I nailed one Mr. Brian.
So
I think it was you said southern.
You would say Brian. So. Just to be clear, Bryn. That's Brian. How it's spelled, and you would pronounce that Brian.
Brian.
You wouldn't pronounce that Bryn.
No, man, that's one Mr. Brian. He's got a little southern. It's like molasses rolling off your tongue, Zachary. It's Brian.
Works on a plantation of some kind. It sounds like. Do you want to take a stab at the next name?
This is Nick. Yeah, I nailed it. Nick.
Lashinksi. Nick Lashinksi.
Yeah, but I got Nick right.
Lashinksi. Lashinksi, right? The K is before the S. Whatever. Nick says, I just started listening and I'm going back through old episodes, so forgive me if you already covered this. Have you noticed supply chain issues with Honda and maybe other manufacturers? Goes on to say, bought a Rebel 1100. Very good choice, by the way. A pretty good bike there. And took 6 weeks for a dealer to get a part to fix. It sounds like there are a lot of other motorcycles having this problem. Hard to get accessories for it. Have we heard of this with Honda or any other brands? Spurgeon, would you like take first crack at this?
Find me a brand that's not having supply chain issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
the bottom line here, Nick, is that yes, you are correct.
So we picked this comment because it's 2021, right? It's a very topical comment. If Zack and I are still fortunate enough to be doing this podcast, 5 years from now, we might not be having the same discussion. I was watching a piece on the news this morning where the White House, the current administration, is talking about trying to put penalties in place if the port in Los Angeles doesn't go to 24-hour duties because they need to bring things into the country. So supply chain issues are so far beyond motorcycling, but even here at RevZilla, we have trouble getting gear. If you've tried to shop with us recently, I've read some of your customer service emails that you're sending in. People are upset. People are frustrated. People want to buy things and they can't. And it's something that I know I'm feeling. I sold my 1090 expecting to be able to buy an 890, and I don't have an 890 in my garage right now. It's been a bitter pill to swallow.
It's a bitter first world pill to swallow.
Yeah. Luckily, BMW gave me an 850 GS to ride around for the past couple of months.
All right. Jeez, Louise.
But yeah. So I guess it's everybody's feeling this pinch, and it is something that we just have to be a little more cognizant on. My 350's in the shop for repair right now, and it was supposed to be a 1 week thing, and it's been there for 3.5 weeks because it's a parts issue. They can't find the parts. So.
Yep. So it's a topical sort of COVID thing. You're right to call it out, Nick. And sorry you're having trouble with your Rebel 1100. I hope that it's fixed by the time you hear this podcast. And I hope everyone will give their dealer or whoever their supplier is for whatever they're waiting for a little bit of slack, because it is a global problem. And in some ways, a good problem to have. It means people are wanting to participate in these activities. So. Yeah.
Little customer service note here. If you are planning on shopping for the holidays, do get your orders in early, because supply chain issues are a real thing.
And we do apologize as RevZilla.com.
We want Santa Claus to be able to come down your chimney this year. So sorry if we can't help make that happen.
Next comment is from Jordan Mincy.
Nailed it. That's how I pronounce that one too. Mincy.
Jordan says, we talked briefly about a trip across Alaska that I did earlier this year. And Jordan says, calling it now, the thing Zack is doing in Alaska is a CTXP episode riding the new Kawasaki KLR. I love this prediction.
Do you want to break his heart now, or do you want to wait for the episode to come out? Come on. KLR. That's too much power for you. You can't. That's almost too easy. I rode the KLR back from the press launch, and it's too easy to ride long distances. That bike is a touring machine.
It's vicious. Let's just say the only person that can handle it would probably be Quinn Edgington. Anyway, it's not. It's not a KLR across Alaska, Jordan, but I love the prediction. I love that you're paying attention. I love that you're trying to put it together. And to Spurgeon's point, it is a smaller motorcycle than a KLR. That
you brought it back to Quinn, man. That's so good. That's genius.
So stay tuned for a new CTXP that is hitting airwaves. Wait, when is it, Chase? When does this go live?
Will
CTXP live?
Yeah. So this should be out by then. We are aiming. Yeah, I'm doing the math in my head. We are aiming to have the Alaska episode go live on November 20th because we're trying to coordinate.
But when does this podcast go live? We're pulling back the curtain in a way that I never meant to do.
10/29. So we're giving people about a 20-day window that letting them know that they should stay tuned. And this is actually a good point. Zack and I are working on the Highside, Lowside live podcast. That's something that we're trying to put together. And if all goes right, it will be that same weekend in Southern California on Friday, November 19th. There's a fun little Easter egg for you.
Indeed.
Keep up with Instagram, and we will have all of that information coming out. But no,
keep up with the Instagram, kids.
We'll send out emails and such as well. Just make sure you subscribe to all the different things, and you'll get hit. Jordan. Zack did not ride a KLR 650, and you will have to tune in. Keep making your guesses, folks. Keep throwing in your comments down below. And maybe one of you will guess correctly.
Yes.
So let's move right along. This is a man.
Speaking of KLRs, though,
I would say no. Speaking of a man after your own heart, this is Zack. Zack with a C, no K, wrote in Zack F and said he's got a 5-year plan to ride to Dead Horse from his home in Illinois.
That's the top of Alaska, for those of you who don't know.
Top of Alaska, and it's going to be about a 10,000-mile trip over 4 weeks, and at least 1,000 of those miles will be on gravel and dirt roads, including the Dalton Highway. Zack knows that Zack, so Zack with a C knows that Zack with a CK has ridden the Dalton Highway, knows that Spurge is an ADV guy, figured that we would be just the people to ask for a motorcycle recommendation. Some of the bikes on the short list are V-Strom 1050 XT, my father would be so proud, a used FJR, which is ballsy, and a Moto Guzzi VT85. Seems like you can find all of these within the $12,000 to $15,000 range. So knowing that his range is $12,000 to $15,000, which is you can find a lot of good bikes in that range.
Absolutely.
What would you recommend?
Couple little pieces of housekeeping. If you're Googling it, if you're following along on the Google, trying to keep up with what bikes Zack is talking about, V-Strom 1050 XT, you might be familiar with. FGR would be the Yamaha FGR 1300. And the Moto Guzzi mentioned, I think he meant to say V85 TT.
I
believe, not VT85.
Yeah.
But point being, the sort of Moto Guzzi adventure bike, which is it is a left field choice, but I like it, Zack. I like it.
It's the V-Strom of Moto Guzzi's lineup. It's pretty much the V-Strom of their lineup.
Yeah,
I'm going to say it. I'm going to get an angry call from Shane over to Prilly as soon as this podcast airs. He's like, "How dare you?"
Right. Anyway, Zack. We should say Zack went on to say, he's after cheaper running costs, but this is a once in a lifetime trip, so he wants to enjoy the actual riding, and said basically, P.S. I don't want to ride 10,000 miles on a KLR in 4 weeks. Because he probably knew we were going to say, take a KLR. That's a great idea.
It is a great idea. That's a very lovely little motorcycle.
I mean, I guess just like shoot from the hip. I'm going with either first gen Africa Twin or a T7 or Yamaha Tenere 700. That's like my first two shots fired. What do you think?
I like them both. I'm going with a Tiger 800. I don't think that he's going to be able to find a Tiger 900 in that price range.
Yeah.
I think that, and I would probably go with, if you could go with a Tiger 900, I would go with the GT. I don't think he needs the 21-inch front wheel. But
correct.
Knowing that he's okay with dabbling around used. I would look for a used Tiger 800. I think that especially with the 19-inch mag wheel setup, that could be a great bike for him.
Or even the Ryan Fortnine signature model ADV F800 GS, which
isn't he riding an F850 now?
He might be. Anyway, yeah. F850 or F800 GS Adventure. Not a bad bike. The engine's not very characterful and it's not great on the highway, but it's a pretty decent adventure bike, and it does have extra fuel on board, which is good for a long trip like that. So that's something you could consider, and it's a sort of tried and true, the aftermarket's boiling over with, all the parts that you need, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think my recommendation, and again, just based on the amount of street miles he'd be doing, is I would probably lean towards the Tiger.
Yeah, that's true. Tiger's a better touring bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I like your Tenere pick. I think one of the things that I want to make sure that I always drive home whenever I get the opportunity is that I like that Tenere on the highway. I think that the Tenere is a great highway bike. The reason that I would say possibly find yourself a used Tiger 800 is that in the later years, you could get him with electronic cruise control. And if he's laying down that kind of miles, it might be nice. Mm-hmm.
And let's back up really quick. Don't get an FJR. Don't get an FJR 1300. That's going to be pretty comfortable for your sport touring duties. It's a classic sport touring bike. It is a good engine.
Heavy though. Heavy.
It's very heavy. And if you go, and on gravel, it's going to be awkward. And if you go into a campsite or something like that and you try and do a U-turn, you might tip it over, and then you're tipping over a heavy bike with a full fairing. And I don't think that's the right call. So don't do an FJR.
We actually just did the episode about sport touring bikes and the evolution of sport touring bikes with Lance Oliver. Yep. And the FJR was a bike that we talked about in that episode. So if you want more information on some of the sport touring lineage and the history there, we dove in further. But I agree with Zack. I think getting into a modern sport touring motorcycle, and by the modern, I mean, we talked about the evolution of adventure bikes becoming great sport touring models.
Right.
That's where I think my mind is probably the same as Zack's on this one.
Right. Well, look at that. Spurgeon and Zack agree. How about that?
Well, Spurgeon and Zack with a K agree. Zack with a C. It was actually funny listening to you talk about this because it sounded like you were talking in third person. You're like, Zack doesn't want a KLR.
Zack doesn't like KLRs. That's usually how I talk when I talk about KLRs. So hopefully that's helpful, Zack. And please ride safe and have fun on that once in a lifetime trip. That sounds awesome. Whether it's now or 5 years from now.
Can we come with you? I would like to do that.
Yeah, fair enough. Next comment is from username Cruising the Tieway, who says, and I quote, "What can I do to ease my wife's nerves on the back of my bike? When she rides with me, I slow down to the astronomically slow speed of 85 miles an hour, and she starts pounding on my back to slow down more. I can't do that. Not safe to go any slower."
I can't tell. Zack and I, so again, what I would like to say is we should start video recording our meetings because Zack and I have these pre-production meetings for the podcast. And this one, we literally went through hundreds of comments with our producer Chase to figure out which ones we wanted to use. And honest to God, like we could have just taped that whole session and made a podcast out of it because like we were all crying laughing and Zack was coming up with some pretty good one-liners. But we can't figure out if this person is with us or not. Like,
that's what Spurge said about this comment. He was like, it sounds like a joke. He's kidding, right? His wife wants him to slow down and he won't. Why won't he slow down?
Like the astronomically slow speed of 85 miles an hour. And then he ends it with, it's not safe to go any slower than that. Like, is he riding on the Autobahn? Like, is he getting passed by like a Porsche and like he can't go? Like, it's like Sammy. I feel like this is Sammy Hagar, right? Like he can't go 55. Like just take his keys. He can't drive anymore. He can't go 55 except for his is 85. You know, I don't know.
Yeah. The reason we picked this comment was to sort of address a simple truth about which we covered a little bit in the passenger episode. If the person on the back of your motorcycle wants you to go slower, you should go slower. And if it's not safe to go, whatever, ignore the 85 mile an hour thing. If it's not safe in your mind to go the speed that they would like to go, move to a slower road or don't ride with them on the back of your bike. Yeah. That's where you draw the line. There's no getting around it really. And we're not going to get into marital advice here, but if your wife doesn't want you to be going that speed, I recommend slowing down.
We've already nailed the parenting advice, Zack. Why don't you tell us how to make his wife happy?
Exactly. Here's the thing about marriage. It's an organism. You have to water it.
I would say that like anytime we can use an example here to kind of tie back to some of the things we've talked about in the past, one of the things that I really did like that we hit on in the passenger episode was make your passenger comfortable. Whether that's slowing down, not doing wheelies, not being a jackass, like you're the ambassador for motorcycling when you have a passenger on the back. It's your job to make that person comfortable so that they go around and maybe they want to get into motorcycling or maybe they just tell other people how much fun motorcycling is. If you terrify someone, the opposite's true and that person's going to walk around and talk about how terrifying motorcycling is. So let's make it a better place for all.
Right. And maybe you ride too fast cruising the Tieway, or maybe motorcycling isn't your wife's thing. And if those either one of those things are true, then there could just be an impasse, an incompatibility.
But we're not here to put your marriage back together or rip it apart. So let's move on to Jeff Gibbs,
who
writes in from the best motorcycle movie scenes and some of the absolute worst, episode 6 of the past season. And Jeff says, on the topic of Triumph announcing building dirt bikes, you guys said that you're surprised that BMW hasn't done that. BMW did do that. They did the dirt bike thing with the 450X several years ago. They competed in the WEC and it failed miserably, unfortunately. Zack, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I never know how to react when, when we're talking about Triumph announcing that they're going to that they've hired Ricky Carmichael as an ambassador and that they're sort of like diving into off-road in a modern sense. And we say something like, it's kind of surprising that BMW hasn't done that since they make single cylinder bikes and they have like they're very widespread. They have scooters and adventure bikes and that kind of thing. And then someone says, they tried it once. How could you not talk about that? And the fact that it failed means that it's over forever. Motorcycle manufacturers aren't Wile E. Coyote. They don't try something once and then think, well, I tried that. Not going to do that again. They often come back to things, as they did with the Cruiser, frankly, right? BMW built a Cruiser in the early 2000s or late 90s or whatever it was there.
And it was so successful the first time, they decided to do it again.
Exactly. Didn't work out quite as well as they planned. A topic of a CTXP episode, for what it's worth, if you're looking for something to do when you're leading this podcast. The point is, manufacturers often loop back to ideas that they've tried before to try them again. And I think that the G450X that Jeff mentioned that's absolutely true. Jeff is not wrong. BMW did try that, and it did fail to a certain extent. But I'm still surprised that they haven't considered jumping back in, especially in the years of the COVID climate when the off-road industry has taken off.
I'll take it one step further, Jeff. Here's a fun fact for you. BMW owned Husqvarna at one point, and they didn't hold on to them, and now KTM owns them, and they've turned it into a wildly successful franchise, from what I can tell, by the sold-out Husqvarnas on dealership floors. Why didn't BMW hold on to them? Why didn't they develop them? Why aren't they trying to make another go at it? I don't know the answer to that, and that gets back to my original point. Dirt bike sales are through the roof right now. Yeah. Off-road enduro sales are through the roof right now. Adventure bikes are. Given BMW's pedigree in the dual sport world of adventure riding, I am surprised they couldn't make it work. I'm surprised they couldn't do a better job, and I'm surprised they're not more interested in getting into that. And again, the whole point of this was the fact that, like, Zack and I have a hard time getting behind things and putting our opinions on things when all we have is hearsay. Yes, they invested in some riders, and yes, they're going to be putting a dirt bike out, but I haven't seen one. So, like, I'm optimistic. I think Triumph's been building some amazing motorcycles. I'd love to see something from them because I think it would put some great competition out there. But, like, I am surprised that BMW hasn't stuck with it. I am surprised they let Husky go. I'm surprised they didn't put more R&D development at that segment, you know?
And if the BMW R18 Cruiser says one thing, it says that if BMW wants to put its mind to something and really buckle down and spend a lot of money in development and do something wholeheartedly, it does that, and it can do that. It has the resources. So bottom line, very much appreciate the comment, Jeff. It's a good point to bring up that BMW was in the dirt bike world, albeit briefly. But I hope it doesn't deter BMW from trying again. And to Spurgeon's point, it seems like they've had some opportunity to do more and haven't. So hopefully something comes of that at some point. Yeah. Or, to your point also, Spurgeon, maybe the Triumph thing won't come to anything. So I don't know.
I hope it does. I mean, I think that's the one thing that we're very fortunate with right now is that, regardless of which brands you gravitate towards or who you prefer to ride, which brand you prefer to ride, not who you prefer to ride. That came out wrong. But like, regardless of which brand you kind of gravitate towards, Zack and I joke around a lot, but we've got a lot of different brands of motorcycles that we enjoy. It's a good time to be a motorcyclist. There's no shortage of amazing motorcycles out there right now that are incredibly reliable and incredibly fun. And, there is something for everyone. So additional competition in the market, additional, brands bringing, new life and new ideas into a segment, I'm all for it because it forces other people to then, kind of raise their bar a little bit too. And you don't have stagnation. So I'm excited to see anybody jump into any different segment, whether that's BMW's making bikes to compete with Harley Davidson, or it's Harley Davidson making bikes to compete with BMW or whoever. Right. So yeah.
Fair enough. All right.
Enough of that one. Look at I kind of got a tangent right now. My God, I'm sorry. I'm going to settle down.
Really wound us up, Jeff.
Settle down.
Next question is from username Southern Alp Fell, who took the time to comment simply to say, "You guys give Americans a good name. Such really nice guys and girl. Blessings from Kiwiland." What a nice thing to say. We wanted to sort of take a pause partway through the podcast here and flatter ourselves with just a genuinely nice comment. And I have nothing more to say than this person, Phil, has given New Zealanders a good name as far as I'm concerned. I think by just being so GD nice.
I think it's interesting in the fact that, like, I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel internationally to a couple different places, and I remember specifically when I went to Morocco, and I was flying into Morocco from France, and people were, just warning you about like, oh, you have to be careful in Morocco about this and about that. I went to Morocco and I had the best time. I met the nicest people. And I think that it goes to show that anytime you listen to outsiders' opinions about what a certain country is like, it's often misguided and misjudged. I've never been somewhere where I just haven't met amazingly nice people. And I think that too often times the news, what have you, focuses on the negative and the bad and the scary. And in my personal opinion, especially when it comes to motorcycling, the world is a big and beautiful place. And if Southern Alp says that, we're doing a good job of being good ambassadors as Americans to the rest of the world, that, and that's super flattering as well, just in the fact that there's people all over the world listening to us, super incredibly, don't even know how to put into words, flattering and humbling. It's a little bit of a warm, fuzzy feeling, and, it makes me smile.
Indeed. So thanks for taking the time to pat us on the back, Phil. That means a lot.
Yeah. And now we're going to take about, let's say, 60 seconds to pat Motul on the back.
Yes.
All right. So we are back. Zack has now stripped down to just a bow tie. So if you're listening to this, he's just wearing a bow tie at this point.
And a shirt and pants, just to be very extra super clear. I have taken off the orange unitard, but I'm still rocking the bow tie. I don't hate the bow tie, actually.
All right. You look regal.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Punk Parody. This is comment 11, wrote in and said, in the last 2 decades or thereabouts, which is the most beautiful looking motorcycle or its manufacturing company?
Right. So we just wanted to tip a cap to Punk Parody because this is on our list, has been on our list for many months now as an episode. We want to dive into best looking and worst looking motorcycles of all time. Seems like a super fun thing to chew over. We like that your head went there too. So thank you for the comment.
Yeah, so we're not going to give away what our picks are, but what I would say is that if you're sitting at your keyboard right now looking for something to type and you don't have an angry comment in mind about how Zach's beard is better than mine, what I would say is that go ahead and throw in a comment about what bike you think is the best looking motorcycle of all time of the past 20 years. Which is your favorite manufacturer from an aesthetic standpoint? Throw those comments in, and we will keep them in mind for when we put that episode together.
Absolutely. And again, if you're not right in front of YouTube right now, feel free to send an email to Highside, Lowside at RevZilla.com, and we'll take all the help we can get.
Always. If you help us do our job, it makes it a lot easier for us to have to do nothing. So all right. That's what we're all working for.
You take the next one, Spurge.
Rita Lee. Rita Lee.
Ritali. I have no idea.
Wow. No, I didn't even see that. It's Rita Lee. It sounds like we're singing Irish folk songs over here. Okay, this comes from episode 4, Harley's new model. Marquez's big win in the most exciting moto events was the title of the episode. And Rita Lee writes in and says, Harley needs to build a 4-cylinder motorcycle. They're already targeting younger people and people who like high-performance motorcycles. There is no reason to try and uphold a reputation of only offering V-twins.
Interesting. Very,
Zack,
very interesting.
I'm going to let you take first stab at the response to this one.
Well, the last bit that I'd like to read of this comment is they said Harley-Davidson could make a retro-styled 4-cylinder bike too, similar to the 1932 Henderson Inline 4, which is really, it's quite an astute comment. They're talking about their whole line of there were inline 4. I think Indian, Hendy. There were a bunch of inline 4 bikes back in that era, sort of like
Ariel had a square 4.
A square 4, 2 cranks. Yeah. Anyway, I apparently responded to this comment on YouTube already, which I don't remember. So either I was completely blackout or
which is possible. We've talked about your California grass out there before in other episodes.
So Harley has technically built a 4-cylinder before. I think they built a V4 and the what was it called? It was called Project something. Now I'm blanking on it. Do you remember off the top of your head?
It was in your comment, and our producer Chase was like, "Should I give you guys the comment?" We're like, "No, we got this." And now we don't have it.
Now we're dropping the ball. Anyway,
it looked like a Harley Davidson that just had a V4 in it.
Right. It did kind of do that. So I'd like to address the part of the comment where this person said
Project
there's no
Nova.
reason...
Sorry, Project Nova.
Right, Project Nova. Yeah. Project Nova, exactly. Or in Spanish, Project No Go. Anyway, this person, Ridley said there's no reason to try to uphold a reputation of only offering V-twin engines. And I think that's where Harley would definitely disagree. And I don't know if it's the right, in some ways I agree. Like, how cool would a longitudinally mounted inline 4, like air cooled looking crazy 20s styled motorcycle be? That would be so cool. But I don't know if it makes sense from a research and development standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, from a sales standpoint. I just don't see that being as successful as them saying, well, to appeal to younger people, we'll make something that looks classically Harley Davidson, but also make it fast. Not unlike the new Sportster, actually. They could
just release the Bronx, and I think people would rejoice. Like, my issue with this comment is that we're seeing more and more manufacturers go away from inline 4s and create motorcycle engines that have more practicality for street use. There's no doubt in my mind that an inline 4 has an amazing place on a racetrack. And yes, there are ways, like we've talked about the MT10 a lot on this show, as an engine that's lovable on the street as well. But I think that, like, for me, there's no reason to get away from a V-twin platform unless they were going to do something like a parallel twin to make it, more affordable in an entry-level capacity,
Yeah, totally true. So I don't see that happening. I like the outside the box thinking here. I think it's a fun idea, and it would be a rad custom, and maybe Harley will take your comment to heart. That would be really cool. But I think it's a little bit of a long shot. Next question, comment is from Akbar K. Akbar is 5'11" and weighs 270 pounds, and has an MT-07, and would like to hear some of our comments on larger people riding motorcycles and how to make themselves comfortable. Yes, Spurg?
Yeah, so I picked this one. As a larger rider, I felt like I could identify with Akbar, and I wanted to kind of throw some wisdom out there too for the rest of you larger riders. He went on to talk about the tires he was using, and all the different changes in suspension. But you're really the problem that he's running into is the bike isn't handling the way that he wants it to, right? And his question around his weight was, does he really invest in mods to the suspension, or does he just go out and buy a different bike? He's already got the preload maxed out on the MT-07. And so what I will tell you, Akbar, is that I'm currently 200. I fluctuate between 200 and 205 pounds. I've lost some weight. But at my heaviest, I was about 245 pounds. So still, 25 pounds, short of where you're at, or about, 20 to 25 pounds short of where you're at. And at 245 pounds on an MT-07, I was feeling like the suspension was a bit, undersprung for a rider of my size. Jen Dunstan, who recently rode an MT-07, who weighs about half of what I do, felt like the MT-07 was a bit undersprung for her aggressive style of riding. True. So realistically, there's a bigger issue here. The average motorcycle in America is sprung for a riding weight of about 170-pound rider, right? Give or take, you can add 15 pounds on top of that, take 15 pounds away. You can play around with preload adjustment and pretty much get yourself dialed in. But chances are, if you're on the far north end of 170 pounds, or you're on the far low end of 170 pounds, you're probably going to have to adjust your motorcycle springs. And I'm not talking about going out and spending a ton of money, but a set of springs is going to go a long way. The issue becomes with a bike like an MT-07, with the rear shock on that bike, because it's a bit of a budget shock. In most cases, you can't just swap the spring. In most cases, you are going to end up replacing the shock. Now, there are some more affordable options out there. You can probably do it for around $700 to $800, somewhere around there. You might be able to find a rear shock for it. But in the front, you can just put heavier springs in the front and rebuild the front. So you can get a bit of the cost savings there. But my point is that if you are a heavier rider, that's probably a consideration you should be making for your motorcycles. If you are going to start pushing, a little bit more aggressively, is just making sure that they're sprung for your rider weight first and foremost. And Akbar, honestly, like, it's up to you as far as, like, do you want to make that investment with your MT-07? Like, do you like the bike otherwise? Is it a bike that you could see yourself keeping for a while? And if it is, a new rear shock and a set of heavier fork springs up front is going to go a long way to making that bike even more enjoyable, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Zack comes in at like 170 pounds, so he never has to worry about this stuff. He's, that's perfectly svelte.
Not how much I weigh at all. But anyway, I think that
with that bow tie you do.
Does it take away 25 pounds? So yeah, I think it's all Spurgeon's advice is good. It's worth, definitely. The point is here, the MT-07 is a smallish bike, small to mid-size bike, and it's classically a little bit undersprung, and you are not a small to mid-size rider, Akbar. So it's worth adjusting the suspension for sure. Like a new shock or something like that's a great idea, and I think you'll find you like the bike a lot better. As for all the mentions, he mentioned other stuff about what tires are being used and that kind of thing. I think all your comments, Akbar, were right on the money. You've got the right idea of using good tires and keeping in mind the suspension adjustment. Just, I think a little upgrade would go a long way for you.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So again, really appreciate that question, because there was a lot of detail that Akbar put into it, and that was one that we really had a nice discussion around, Zack and I, as we were trying to figure out how to answer that one. So I want to say thank you to the next commenter. So in episode 6 of season 4, the best motorcycle movie scenes episode, I talked about when I was I was like second or third grade. I was obsessed with this book at the library on mini bikes. And I would just keep going back to the school library and getting this book over and over again, but I could never find it. And Wild Chicken wrote in and said, Spurge, the book you're looking for is written by David Lynn Seaver, and it's titled Mini Bike Racing. So I got on eBay and I bought myself a copy. And it actually is from the Comanche Public Library. And I got Mini Bike Racing by David Lynn Seaver. Now here's what I'll show you, Zack. The pictures on this are awesome. It's just a bunch of kids riding mini bikes. So imagine if you were a child and you were like, you've never been to Southern California before, and this is what you're looking at, and all you're thinking is, man, the kids in Southern California get to go out and do this? And you tell me you wouldn't want to be a child growing up in Southern California after looking at this book. It's amazing. Even to this day, as a 38-year-old, 205-pound, 6'3" grown man, I look at this and I'm just like, look at these kids. It's
epic.
It's so good. So I will say this. I don't remember exactly what I was expecting out of this book. And I was in third grade when I read it multiple times. I think this is the book, but I don't know if my search is over yet. Like, some of the pictures aren't necessarily the pictures that I remember them being.
Gotcha.
I remember it being much more like mini bikes, like, a Coleman, pull start mini bike type thing.
Right.
This is a bit more of like, these look like professional little mini bikes, but either way, this really captures the theme of what I was looking for. And what gravitated me towards, motorcycles back when I was a little kid. So just a big thank you to Wild Chicken. I would also like to say that there were a bunch of comments that actually came in around this, and there were multiple people that recommended the David Lynn Seaver book to me. So to everyone out there that wrote in, thank you very much. It means the world to me that you guys, took the time to really research this and help me find it. And then if there's any other recommendations that you have that you think it might be another book that I was thinking of, throw them in. I got the money to spend. I'm just racking up eBay bills buying children's literature from the 1970s, apparently.
As we've discussed, Spurgeon Dunbar, a very wealthy man. So happy to spend whatever it takes on the used market.
1972. David Lynn Seaver. This book was $15. It was money well spent. $15 to get my own copy of Mini Bike Racing by David
It's
Lynn.
a handsome book, and it's darn cool that people wrote in.
It's hardcover. For those of you listening, this is a hardcover. This isn't paperback. Listen to that. That's a hardcover book right there.
Remarkable. Yeah. Next comment is from Garrett Jacks, who wrote in regarding the Motorcycle is Dangerous episode with Ari Henning, where we talked about sort of different styles of motorcycling, riding on the street, riding off-road, racing off-road, racing on-road, that kind of stuff, and what sort of our perceptions were about what was more dangerous and what we would recommend for people to do. With regard to different types of disciplines in motorcycling and what's most and least dangerous, Garrett Jacks wrote in and said, as a registered nurse who spent a few years working in an orthopedics department, I recall probably 8 of the 10 motorcycle injuries I helped treat were from motocross. Lots of wrist, ankle, and leg fractures from not making a jump. So
8 out of 10. We see this is where this comment got confusing for me. Was it 8 out of 10?
Yeah, 8 in 10, 80% of the.
So this person was saying that 80%
again, Spurgeon struggles
of the
with reading. He's not super literate, so we have to help him through this stuff sometimes.
Stop it. We had a discussion about this, and I was originally like, like 8 to 10, and you're like, no, it's 8 out of 10. So according to what I'm reading, the way I'm reading this is that Garrett Jacks is saying that 80% of the motorcycle, of the motorcycle industries. Okay, that makes more sense. So out of all the motorcycle injuries that this individual treated,
correct,
80% of them were from motocross.
Right.
Now it all makes sense.
Okay. Glad you're coming along
I thought
with
they were
us
saying.
at this point.
I thought they were saying that 80% of the injuries they've ever treated in the emergency room were from motocross. And that's when I was like, were they at a hospital like next to a track? Like where were they getting all these motocross patients?
Well, it does bring up the question of where Garrett Jacks was a nurse and because that sort of demographic where the hospital was that they worked at, that kind of thing makes a big difference, obviously, but. The point is, this is an interesting sample because all we basically said was like, we're not very good at riding motocross. Jumps are scary. We don't do that. I don't know. But this person said, I worked at an ER and I worked in an orthopedics department, and I found that there were a lot of motocross injuries from jumping. So I appreciate that feedback very much.
I appreciate that you worked in your little baby voice because you did that in the meeting, and I was afraid you were going to let it slide for this one. So there you go, folks. Motocross, according to our sample of 1, is the more dangerous of the two.
Right. Well, the next comment is from Brian Jones, and this is my chance to give a special thank you to a viewer or listener. Brian wrote in and said, a message for Zack. You should check out the free CD that's compact disc for you younger listeners and viewers that came with the October 2002 issue of the UK bike magazine. The UK magazine Bike. It was called, quote, World of Noise, singles, twins, triples, etc., riding past and stationary, just the engine noises. So Brian Jones understands that I appreciate listening to engines and suggested this CD, which I'm not sure exactly how I'll get my hands on a 20-year-old CD that came out in Britain. But I love that you took the time to write in, Brian. It's awesome. And I really appreciate the comment. And I'll look for that CD because a CD of just motorcycle noises sounds great to me.
Well, Zack, I have a surprise for you and our listeners.
What?
I am working on, with Chase, getting you a copy of the CD. And the way that our listeners are going to get to enjoy this is that if we do this correctly, we're actually going to play the game. We're gonna create the game of motorcycle listening sounds that you've been wanting to do for years. And if we can pull it off and pull it together, at the live episode of Highside, Lowside, we are going to put together a little bit of a game show for you and I, and maybe we'll even get some audience participation in for everybody that gets to show up. So I'm not going to give away any more, far, but again, we are planning some things for this live episode of Highside, Lowside.
That's very exciting.
Yes.
I can't believe you're actually tracking down that CD. That's great.
We're already on it, and I'm not going to say it's already en route because I don't want to make promises that I can't quite deliver, but we're getting close. We have a couple leads.
Nice, nice.
The
exactly.
the internet's a wild place. You can find mini bike books from 1972 and CDs from 2002. It's crazy. So moving on to comment 19, and we're getting towards the end of the standard section before we have our little special treat here. So for those of you that have stuck with us for the past hour and 20 minutes, thank you very much. This is from episode 9. Loud pipes save lives and other moto myths. There were some comments from people that were very upset about this episode. So just for what that is, we kind of struck a chord with certain people, and holy shit, I can't pronounce this one. Szlejer?
Slayer? Yeah.
Slayer? Okay. Let's say Slayer. That sounds better. Oh, Slayer. Wrote in and said, loud pipes make cars open up lanes when lane filtering and splitting in congested cities. Loud pipes make pedestrians, cyclists, and other motorcyclists turn heads so they don't get run over. I can hear loud pipes when sitting in my 2018 Mazda 3 in city traffic. There is a reason why sound generators on electric cars are now mandatory safety devices in the EU. Stop spreading your one-sided biased lies that loud pipes don't save lives. There are some situations where they have little to zero benefits. For example, when wind noise negates them, which apparently the wind is louder than the exhaust. But there's always a flip side to everything. So Slager is apparently very upset with us because we suggested that loud pipes probably don't save as many lives as, just holding your horn on the whole time. And that he wanted to let us know that loud pipes, in fact, do save lives. Zach, why don't you take this one?
Well, I think the main problem that I have with this comment is the very binary nature of it, right? This person wrote in and said, sound generators on electric cars are now mandatory safety devices in the European Union because completely silent vehicles are dangerous. I think maybe what this person is forgetting that we were talking about is that it's not just ear-splittingly loud Harley-Davidsons and electric cars. Those aren't the two types of vehicles we have on the road. Most vehicles...
One all the way over here and then one all the way over here, right?
Yeah. Most vehicles make some sound. So if you're riding a Ninja 650 or a Honda Magna or any motorcycle almost ever with the stock exhaust on it, I would argue that pedestrians would still turn their heads because they would know that a motorcycle is coming because there's an engine making noise coming toward them, just same as a car or whatever. Same thing with cyclists. If you're filtering through traffic, the motorcycle is going to make some noise. I've been in a car and I can hear a motorcycle with stock exhaust coming through. I think that this person is overestimating the benefit of just shatteringly loud vehicles. And I think unfair to not realize that most motorcycles do make noise. They just make a reasonable amount of noise instead of an insanely loud noise, which was the point all along here.
And I would argue too, and this is fair game now because Slager brought it up. Safety devices are he said that sound generators on electric cars are now mandatory safety devices, and he said safety devices in all caps in the EU.
Sure.
I guarantee you, Slager, that you don't have Bob the engineer sitting in the sound booth over a Tesla being like, well, let's crank this up to straight pipes on a Sportster from 1985 loud, Bill. Like we gotta make sure we meet those mandates. Like they're putting on sound generators that let you know that a vehicle is rolling down the road. Like they're not putting on, sound generators that are going to wake up sleeping dad's baby in the back of the car and making him cry out in pain. Like,
Right. So for those of you thinking that we were saying all vehicles should be completely perfectly silent and wouldn't that be nice, that's not what we meant. All we meant was let's not have them be ridiculously loud. And those are two different things. Hopefully that's more clear now.
His name was Sleep Deprived Dad. I got his name wrong. So our comment earlier was Sleep Deprived Dad.
Sure.
So, all right, so let's move right along. Sorry we upset you on that episode. But actually, I'm not sorry. If we're not creating a little bit of controversy at Highside, Lowside, then what are we even doing here? We're just, making all the Kiwis happy with us. All right, so Peter J. Wrote in with the Build a Bike Challenge. And this is the Build a Bike Challenge episode. And said, whilst listening... Actually, Zach, I have the pictures printed out. So why don't you read the comment? And while you're reading the comment, I will. I'll work on the photos.
So Peter J said, while listening to season 4, episode 8, Build a Bike Challenge with Ari, Zack mentioned these machines that he built would be ugly or, quote, an abomination. Peter says he disagreed in his head, so he took the time to Photoshop a mock-up of each of the bikes to give you an idea of what these bikes might actually look like. So when Ari said he would take an Aprilia engine and put it in a BMW chassis, and I said I'd take a Yamaha engine and put it in a Ducati chassis, Peter went through the trouble of actually photoshopping these bikes and building them himself visually so he could say what would they look like if they actually did exist. And he goes on to say, engineering and marketing aside, I think you guys were onto something. I
want to say that first and foremost, Peter J., you're one hell of a graphic designer. And we have some openings on our design team. So if you're looking for a job, head over
if you want to Photoshop motorcycles 9 to 5 every day.
Head to the careers page at RevZilla.com and fill out an application and tell them that Spurgeon Dunbar is your recommendation. And I will pass these photos along to our art director.
Hold up my mock-up again. Hold up my Multistrada with an MT10 engine.
We're going to do Aries first.
Okay.
So Aries was a 2021 S1000 XR chassis, a Tuono 1100 V4 engine, BMW electronics, adaptive ride headlight, and a full Akrapovich system. Now, I'm sure Bernie will be able to do a better job of showing these. And if you're listening on the podcast, you'll just have to head over to YouTube at some point and check them out. So
this one's a little bit haywire. The back wheel looks bigger than the front wheel. Something happened there.
But it's still a good-looking machine.
It's not bad. It's really not bad.
Now, let's check out Zack Quartz wanted, and we're just a quick reminder, Zack Quartz wanted a 2014 Multistrada chassis. This is very specific, and he got it
Multistrada.
Right. He got the chassis. Like, this is definitely a 2014 Multistrada, an MT10 engine, BMW electronics, an adaptive ride or adaptive headlight, and a top box.
Show us that machine. Ugh. Look at it. It's gorgeous.
He has he got a Vermont sticker on the back for you, as well as a little sticker of the mini bike.
It's a little sticker of the Dumb and Dumber mini bike and a Vermont sticker tugging at my heartstrings. And it's a handsome aluminum top box. And the bike looks fantastic. Does it not?
It's a good looking motorcycle.
Ugh. And it would sound delicious. Yeah. Oh, it's great.
Last but not least, we have Spurgeon Dunbar, who Tiger 900 XC chassis, MT09 triple engine, street. And I don't know if he did this intentionally or if it was a mistake, but he spelled triple with 2 P's, but he did it a couple times. So an MT09 triple engine, a street triple RS brakes, KTM 890 rally electronics, a rally seat, and a KTM sticker. And
this is pretty good. It's my favorite part of this one. It's a little hard to see, but it's a Triumph chassis with a Yamaha engine, and then he put a little sticker on the back that says "I love my KTM" for Spurgeon, which is very, very on brand.
But he also did the sticker. The 09 sticker is off the Yamaha that he did on the front.
I know,
but he did it as an 809, which is kind of more like a KTM. It's cool.
It's pretty cool.
He did a good job with this.
I have to say, Peter, when I looked at the mock-ups that you built, I immediately thought my motorcycle looks awesome. I would absolutely pick mine over those other two jokers. So I think that just sort of adds fuel to my fire that you helped me realize my dream in a certain sense. So we can't thank you enough. That was just a fabulous email to get. It was so much fun. We appreciate you putting the effort in there, Peter J. And I don't know, 1,000 thank yous from the whole Highside Lowside team.
I think for the longest time, Zach and I, and we've made this comment before, we felt like we were going to be Homer Simpson when he gets invited to his long lost, was it his brother or his cousin that owned the auto factory? And like, we were going to build these abominations. But frankly, I think we have another career in front of us. I think we should be consultants for these OEMs, and we can help them design motorcycles.
Yeah. I'll let you go to Ducati and tell them they should put a Yamaha engine in the bike. See how that goes.
All right. Why don't you take the last comment here, Mr. Quartz?
All right. Last comment is from Nikoya, who wrote in regarding the Build-A-Bike Challenge, the same one we just talked about, episode 8. Nikoya says, I'd love to hear the reverse of this idea. What's the motorcycle that if you were stuck with it for 2 years and could ride nothing else, you would just stop riding motorcycles altogether? So basically there's a list out there of bad motorcycles, but at the end of the day, like, they're all motorcycles. So how bad would a motorcycle have to be for us to literally say, you know what, I'm just going to take the car? And Nikoya, the last line of the email or the comment says, the Dumb and Dumber mini bike doesn't count, which is a good thing, a good caveat, because I think I would, if all I had was to ride was the Dumb and Dumber mini bike when I went out to my garage, I'd probably just be like, nah, I'm just going to take my truck.
Are we going to answer this, or do we think this is another episode? Like, that's where
it might be a whole other podcast,
Yeah. Cause I got one. And
you do?
I do got one, but I don't necessarily want to say it right now. I don't want to give it away. I want to kind of want to hold on to it. Yeah. So so Nikoya, I'm going to say that we will possibly build another podcast around this. And if by next season's comments episode, we haven't tackled this in a podcast, I will revisit your comment and I will give you an answer. How does that sound? Does that sound fair, Zach? That sound fair?
That sounds fair to me.
All right.
It's a great idea. It's a good question. And if any of you listeners out there, viewers out there, have an opinion yourself of how bad a bike would have to be for you to not ride it, please send us an email or leave a comment, and we'll use that as fodder.
So this is where things get a little bit different than what we've done in the past. Right. The next email we received was from a Highside, Lowside listener, and Jess wrote in and had an email
that she wrote in.
But the thing is, like, we read what she wrote. She's a motorcyclist that was trying to figure out how to ride with her dog. Obviously, there's a lot of animal lovers amongst the Highside, Lowside, and RevZilla staff. She's a woman rider that's been living in Guatemala, traveling throughout the region. And frankly, like, I think we wanted to bring her on. We wanted to have her tell her story. We wanted to help unpack it. She's doing some really cool charity work. And frankly, at this point, I think we just bring Jess on and we let her talk with us. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Do it. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jess to the program. Jess, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
No, thank you both for having me. This is going to be great.
So this is the first time that we've brought in a Highside, Lowside listener to actually engage with us based on the email that you wrote into us. There's a lot of great things that you're working on that I want to dive into, that I know Zack is excited to dive into. But let's start at the beginning. How did you get into riding a motorcycle? What brought you to two wheels?
Sure. So I met my husband, my now husband, in South Sudan in Africa. He wanted to do like a longer motorcycle trip. He had ridden from Los Angeles down to Panama, but he never finished the trip because he ran out of money. So he always had this dream that he would do from LA all the way down to Chile. And when I met him, he had this idea and he was going to do it in a year's time. And at that point, we had moved to Liberia in West Africa. And he said, well, he's going to do it and I could come along, but he won't take me on the back and I have to learn how to ride a bike by myself.
No.
So, yeah. So I had never ridden before. I had ridden on the back on moto taxis in Africa, but that was really the extent of my riding experience. And I don't know how to drive a standard car. So that was also a thing to learn. So we got these like 160cc, like these TVS bikes and these little street bikes. and he taught me how to ride. And it was horrible because Greg is not a good teacher, and you should never get your spouse or your significant other to teach you how to ride because it was horrible.
Good advice.
But I made it through, and I had about 2,000 kilometers under my belt before we moved back to Los Angeles, and that's where we bought our BMWs to do that north to south trip.
My girlfriend recently went and took a motorcycle training class, and the first thing I was like, "How was it?" She's like, "It was just so good not having you teach me." And I was like, "Probably makes a lot of sense."
She knows it.
Yeah. So you learned when you said you got those TVSs, that was in West Africa that you learned?
That was it. Yeah, that was in Liberia. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
And you're and I think it's important for the audience to know, Jess, you're in Guatemala right now, right?
Yes, I am in Guatemala. We've been here for about 5 years now.
And how did you end up from Africa to Guatemala?
So from Africa, we moved to Los Angeles. There we did our north to south. So we did that actual trip from LA down to Chile. After that, we went back to Los Angeles. We lived in New Orleans for about 2 years. And then because we had been living abroad for so long, those 2 years in New Orleans was a lot. It was a lot of time to be in the States and not really be living somewhere else. So I said, I think it's time for us to get out. And my husband, he ended up getting a job here in Guatemala working for a women's microfinance nonprofit. And so we came out for that job, and that's why we stayed here. And that was about 5 years ago.
So I also want to address that your email to us started off, I don't want to say confrontational, but sort of you said, honestly, there's a big problem. We haven't touched on a huge topic, which is the fast growing subculture of motorcyclists who ride with their dogs. So this is another piece of your life, is you have a dog that you adopted and the dog rides with you. So just out of curiosity, we'll get into that a little bit more, but how many other people do you know that ride with dogs on their motorcycle? Because it seems like a little bit out there to me.
It is. It's a bit of a fringe, but there are a lot of people out there who ride with their dogs, and a lot of people who want to ride with their dogs.
Right.
Especially like during the pandemic, you guys saw how the bike industry, how many people were buying new bikes, how many people were also getting new puppies at the same time.
True.
And you don't want to leave your puppy at home. You want to take your puppy with you when you go on cool adventures. So there are a lot of people out there who want to and who do ride with their dogs now.
I will say I was at an industry event in Malibu a few months ago, and I was on the side of the road on testing a new bike, and a guy rode by on a Yamaha 10RA 700 with his dog perched on the front of the bike. Yeah, and he had like a little piece of carpet in the front, and it reminded me of the scene On Any Sunday. There's a famous scene on Any Sunday with the guy who rides with the dog in the desert races, right? So for anyone else out there who had the first impression that Spurgeon and I maybe did, which is like, riding with your dog, are you crazy? It's more prevalent than maybe you realize. So it's pretty cool that you guys have decided to bring your dog along for all this.
Yeah, it was a have to. I adopted Moxie when she's a German Shepherd, but I got her when she was small. She was 8 weeks,
right.
And we only had our bikes out here, and so we needed a way to take her along. I didn't want to get a car, but I wanted to take her. But I knew she was going to grow up to be this like gigantic beast, and there really was nothing on the market that was going to be able to accommodate her size and being on my bike. So that's how we developed it.
So what did you do? There's a cool video on your YouTube channel that sort of describes this visually, but for those listening, how did you figure out where to put Moxie on your bike and what was that process like?
Sure. So I didn't want a sidecar. I didn't want a trailer. I wanted to like keep the riding experience the same as what I was used to.
Yep.
So when we were thinking about how to carry her, really the best thing that we thought about was we want it to feel like it's a pillion. We want to feel like the weight is in the back, so it feels like you have a passenger on the back. But we don't want it way, way back there because we don't want to be off balance. We want to keep the center of gravity low. And there's no way I'm going to put 75 pounds on the tank. So that's how we came up with the idea. Let's put her on the back. And when she was small, we tried things like, let's put her in a milk crate and let's see how she does with that. And let's try all these different ways of how we could carry her. So we went through a number of iterations until we came up with the final K9 moto cockpit.
So and it's funny because like on the one YouTube video that you have on your channel, there was videos of, I believe it was your husband started with the milk crate, and then like she would sit in the milk crate. There was a video of you like doing a stream crossing, and you crashed, and she was actually like the way that your holder was, like she didn't seem like she got hurt. Like she just kind of sat there on the side, like waiting for you to like pick the bike back up.
Yeah, I've had like dozens of crashes with Moxie now. All of them are off-road. So I am not the best off-road rider, but like they're in Guatemala, like there's no way that you can't ride off-road because there's dirt everywhere here. So there have been a number of tip-overs. Most of them were at slow speeds. But Moxie, she's harnessed in the front and the back. So she sort of just stays there suspended when I go down. And I've got hard panniers on the side. So it sort of gives you that extra bit of space. So she never touches the ground. She just sort of stays there and she waits until I come and unclip her. And then she's ready to go again.
So now with your specific carrier, do you make them for a variety of different motorcycle models, or is it mostly just for BMWs? Like how did you develop the process there?
So the K9 Moto Cockpit, it's a tubular steel frame that's upholstered. It's customizable to any bike. And it's a remote build. So for us, what we do is we get you to take photos of your bike to see where we could potentially mount it. We mark up your photos. We ask you to take measurements so that we can create a build guide for you. And then from there, we ask you to double check it. And then we go and do the build remotely here in Guatemala at our shop. And so you get to basically pick everything in terms of the upholstery and the color of the stitching and what embroidery you want on it. And then we build it with the appropriate mounts that you would use to put it on your bike. So we've done street bikes, we've done ADV bikes, we've done cruisers, a lot of, and mostly it's for big dogs because there's really nothing on the market for big dogs. So dogs that are bigger than like 50 pounds. We've done dogs that are like 120 pounds. Woo. It really just depends on like your bike and your dog and your comfort for riding as well.
So Zach, I could get one of these for you. I could put you on the back of a motorcycle and ride you around with me.
That might be the safest way for me to be on a motorcycle, actually, would be to strap me to the back in a harness. Yeah, although I do weigh more than 120 pounds. So anyway.
Jess, the larger company is called Roughly at this point, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then so you've gone much further, in your line of products. Speak a little bit more towards how the company has grown and what you're working on now as a whole.
Sure. So soon after we got here, when we got Moxie, I really wanted dog gear that was beautiful and sort of took that same Guatemala spirit, which you can see behind me, the colors and that vibrancy, but something that was going to be durable for my German Shepherd, who I knew was going to be a monster. And so I couldn't find anything on the market that sort of paired those two things. So that's how Roughly was formed. So Roughly creates ethical outdoor dog gear, and we work with women Guatemalan artisans here. They're indigenous women who work from their homes in their home workshops, and they're the ones who are doing all of the textile work, and then we've got tailors as well who do the final product of it. So they're the ones who are actually creating all of the cool gear that you see at GoRoughly.com. And from that's where we expanded to create the K9 Moto Cockpit, and we also use the traditional artisans here to help create it.
That's awesome.
So
go ahead, Zach. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Spurge. You.
No, I was just saying, I think it's fascinating to me to see how the product has evolved. And again, for those of you listening, you need to check out, what's the name of the YouTube channel?
It's On Two Wheels and Four Paws. It's on our Roughly channel. And there you're going to see all of the videos that we do, all the trips that we take with Moxie, all of the adventures that I have with her. And then you'll see all information also about the K9 Moto Cockpit if you're interested in bringing your big dog along with you on your rides.
And it seems like Moxie really enjoys it. Like, I mean, again, like it was amazing to me how much like she's almost like the mascot of your company based on like how frequently she shows up in these videos. And she seems like she enjoys riding on the back with you.
Yeah, she really does. Like, you just tell her to saddle up and she'll jump up on the bike. She'll turn around, lay down. She's ready to go. And the cool thing is when you're traveling with a dog, you don't just like stop at the gas station. Like, you're going to stop at cool places for your dog, like you're going to pick a nice park and maybe you'll have a picnic or something because the dog needs to run around and take some time. So it really sort of changes up your style of riding. And if you really like outdoor stuff, if you like camping and hiking and those type of things and you want to bring your dog along or you want to go fishing, like, it's perfect, and it's the best way to take your dog with you.
How much of Moxie's tolerance or enjoyment of riding on a motorcycle do you think is sort of nature versus nurture? Like, do you feel like you did a good job training her? Did you, like, she spent a long time doing it now, like starting when she was a puppy, right? But is there any advice you'd give to people for starting out if they wanted to try putting their dog on a bike?
Sure. So it's really funny. It's like we've sold these canine moto cockpits all around the world now. And the biggest question that we get is, how am I going to know that my dog is going to like to ride before they make this big purchase? Yeah. And we always sort of say, like, if your dog likes to stick their head out the window in the car, or if they're okay on boats, or if they like to go to different places and smell new things, then they're likely going to enjoy it. And for when we talk to people after they get their cockpit, it's funny. It's because the dog is more likely to like leap up and want to get going faster than the human is ready to do it. You know, like when I had to do it with Moxie, like I was so slow. Like, okay, today we're just going to turn on the engine, and then tomorrow she's going to lay down and we're going to harness her. Like I thought it was going to take forever. It took like 2 days. It was a weekend and she was ready to ride, and we were on the main roads and it was nothing. So it's a really quick process. You just sort of have to give a lot of positive reinforcement if there is any anxiety there, but most dogs seem to take to it really well.
So good to know.
What's the next big trip then? Because I know you have a bunch of different things that you're working on. What's the next big trip that you guys are planning together?
So the next one is a big one. This one is going to be an around the world trip. And we are starting this in March 5th, 2022, and it's going to be an 18-month trip across 5 continents. And we're starting it here in Guatemala. And the goal of this trip, it's a fundraiser. And we're fundraising for this really cool organization called Girl Up. And Girl Up, it was founded by the United Nations Foundation. And they're all about giving leadership training and development training to girls around the world. And they work in like 120 different countries, and they've worked with like 90,000 different girls to give them sort of that training that they need to become leaders in their community and to advocate for the issues that matter most to them to achieve gender equality. So it was an NGO that I was really passionate about, that I've always really wanted to do something for. And so this idea of wanting to ride around the world and wanting to support this nonprofit at the same time, I thought, well, let's put it together and let's turn it into a nice big fundraiser. And so the goal is to raise $100,000 for this organization over the course of this time and this trip, so that we can help support more girls around the world.
So how many miles do you think you're going to end up tackling?
Miles, I don't know. I have not figured that out yet. I'm still like working on like the normal logistics of even just getting my dog into America. So it's there's a lot of things that are going on, but it's step by step. We're going through it and getting the appropriate visas and paperwork that we need to be able to do this. Because we're going to start here in Guatemala. We'll be going up to Alaska. And we'll fly out of Toronto in Canada to go over to Europe. And then the plan is to do Africa, north to south, and back up, back to Europe, and then go over to Asia, and then come back down to South America and end in Guatemala.
Wow. So dang. If someone wants to donate and help, with the fundraising efforts and help with, the money that's going to go to Girl Up, where would they go? Where would you tell people and guide people to go?
So you can go to goroughly.com/world-adventure. And that's the main page where you can sort of see the route that we're going to take. You can see the videos that we're making. So all the information is there. That's where you can donate. Any donations in the U.S. are tax deductible, so please come and donate. And then if you want to follow along with our video series, we're going to be putting out an episode a week when we're on the road for On Two Wheels and Four Paws on our YouTube series. So you can go and check that out too and subscribe so that you see the crazy things that we're doing with Moxie.
And we'll make sure we will throw, for everyone listening, we will throw all the links in down below on the YouTube page. So if you are interested, we'll make sure that all the links are found in one place. And then if somebody just wants to buy or talk to you about, whether it's a dog harness or it's a moto carrier for their puppy, would that be goroughly.com as well?
Yep, come to goroughly.com, and then you'll see under the shop there's a place for a motorcycle dog carrier, and that's where you get all the information. There's a lot of information there. There's Q&As there, and we've got a live chat there, so if you've got questions, put it in there. You'll either get me or Greg, and we'll be able to answer your questions. But it's there's a lot of information. But if you have questions, like we would love to answer anything that you guys have. And during the fundraiser, not only can you donate directly to Girl Up, but if you buy any gear, any dog gear, so if you want collars, leashes, beds, bandanas, or anything that you for your dog or as a gift for Christmas, for example, 10% of all of those purchases will also go to the fundraiser. So if you don't want to donate directly, but you want to get some gear, that's great too, and we would love that.
So in addition to helping, create jobs for local artisans, then you're also going to give money back as well. So it sounds like it's a win-win in multiple different ways.
Exactly. Yeah, we wanted to put some skin in the game here. We wanted to say that, we wanted to support this. We didn't want to just ask everybody for their donations. We wanted to donate as well. So that's why 10% of our proceeds will go towards it.
So you're supporting local indigenous artisans in Guatemala, and your husband works for microfinancing, and you're donating to Girl Up, which is a United Nations foundation. And
okay, you're making it sound really stuffy now.
No. I think Zach's making it sound like we're not doing enough. I think now I'm feeling really guilty. Yeah.
What I was going to say is I feel like kind of a clown now, and it makes sense that I'm dressed like one while we're meeting. Because
I'm surprised we made it through this entire thing, and like Jess has not made one mention of the fact that you're wearing a ridiculous bow tie.
Maybe she's just being
awesome.
She's just being respectful. Exactly. She's just being respectful.
You've got those are like Guatemalan colors as well, like the bright colors. Exactly. You just fit right into the segment. This is perfect.
He literally did it for you. That's the whole thing. He was like, that's his his interpretation of the Guatemalan colors.
Right. If there's going to be a guest on the show, I want to try to dress up to look nice. You're yet another Canadian doing good things in the world, and certainly making me feel like a waste of space. But it's all excellent stuff that you're doing, and I'm stoked that you could come on the program and talk about it all. And I hope it'll encourage a dog owner or three to try taking their pooch on their ride. And of course, awesome that people can get products or donate to your adventure if they like. Yeah,
I don't own a dog, but both of my brothers do. And like you said, I'm already looking at like Christmas gifts. I'm like, well, what can I get Max? And then what can I get Rocco? It's a great website. I would recommend everybody check it out. Jess, in closing, is there anything you want to leave the listeners with? Any final parting words of wisdom?
Just come and check out our website and our YouTube series. That would be the best way for you guys to show that you are enjoying what we're doing. Any feedback that you guys have about riding with your dog, or if you're curious about it, I love hearing those things. It's always the best for me to sort of get people out there with their dogs, because the pandemic was tough for everybody, and now we can sort of open up just a little bit more and being able to go out on some adventures. And I know in North America, the weather's turning and it's coming to the winter season, but spring is going to be here soon. Get your cockpit early so that you can practice with your dog, and even if it's in your garage, you can just sort of get them used to it so that by springtime you're ready to go.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. And again, the stuff that you're working on is extremely exciting, and the videos were incredibly entertaining to watch. So thank you for making the time to join with us today.
No, thank you both. This was awesome. Thank you.
The fact that we made it through that entire thing and she did not once mention or acknowledge your giant, ridiculous bow tie was my favorite part of, it was one of my favorite parts of talking to her.
I mean, she's a very polite Canadian person, just like, she just didn't want to be, maybe she's like, maybe he just wears that and that's fine, she was not going to discriminate. So I appreciate that she was so polite. But yeah, it probably would have been better if she said, not for nothing, but why are you wearing that bow tie?
Well, this is for ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that normally join us on Highside, Lowside, this is time we normally talk about viewer and listener comments, but hell, this entire episode has been about you and your comments. Indeed. So I will just say, please leave us your comments on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can always send us an email to highsidelowside@RevZilla.com. Zach and I do our best to read and respond to all of them.
We do. Friendly reminder to leave a review on Apple Podcasts as well. You could win a t-shirt like Mythic Beards 3 or Sleep Deprived Dad. If you're still listening to the podcast at this point, you're probably asleep. We should probably play like a little alarm noise just to...
No. We might wake up sleep-deprived Dad's kid in the back seat. Let's not do that.
That's kid. True. Very, very good point. So we won't do that, but we will thank you for listening to another episode of Highside, Lowside. We hope that you will tune in for the season finale coming soon, where I will not be dressed quite as ridiculously, but we will talk about motorcycles and we will give away more t-shirts.
You look adorable for what it's worth. I mean, the bow tie really works for you.
Gosh.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you for joining us for another episode of Highside, Lowside. We will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.